Let's get it going. Welcome into the show. This is Philadelphia Eagles Now by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr., and here's what's coming up. Could the Eagles hire Jason Kelce as an assistant coach? Also, the New York Giants in shambles about Saquon Barkley signing with the Philadelphia Eagles within this division. Those two stories coming up. But we start right here. So I'm scrolling through X, formerly known as Twitter, a couple of hours ago, and I see that Jason Kelce is trending. And I say to myself, why is Jason Kelce trending? And then I come across this tweet from Kay Adams. She had on Lane Johnson on her show. And the tweet read as such: doesn't sound like Jason Kelce can stay away from the Eagles. Does he still have a locker space? He's at the facility how often throughout this offseason? And will he coach for the Philadelphia Eagles? As we know on X and on social media, it has been a very active last couple of days. It's almost as if something monumental and historic happened a couple of days ago during the weekend, and since that, social media has been going wild. If you know, you know. Here is that dialogue between Kay Adams and Lane Johnson. Kay, I feel like Jason Kelce should coach, though. Lane Johnson responds, most definitely. He was in the building maybe more than some of the players this offseason. Kay stopped him and said, hold on. Jason Kelce retires and you're telling me he was in the building more than you this offseason? Lane Johnson, yeah, he was in there lifting, he was stretching, talking, seeking advice from people on his future. I think he'll be in the building once or twice a week. Kay then responds by saying, does he have real estate where he can put his stuff down inside the facility? Lane, he has a locker in the coach's office. So that has started some speculation. Could the Eagles really hire Jason Kelce as an assistant coach, either now or looking ahead into the future? What a story this would be for one of the most legendary Eagles in the history of this organization, the best center in the history of this team, and one of the best centers of all time. Now, as we know, Jason Kelce retiring this offseason after 13 seasons in which he was an incredible player, multi-time All-Pro, just iconic on and off the field, lived and breathed what it's like to be a Philadelphia Eagle, the epitome and the fabric of what this city is all about as an athlete and as a citizen. He will continue moving forward to do his New Heights podcast with his brother Travis Kelce, who signed a contract extension this offseason with the Kansas City Chiefs. And Kelce, on top of those broadcasting duties, is set to join ESPN's Monday Night Countdown, and I think he's going to be very successful in those endeavors. But remember back to what Nick Sirianni said after the year, that Jason Kelce always has a place on the Eagles. And if Kelce wanted to coach, if he wanted to consult, I think the Eagles would allow him to do that. Shoot, he helped Howie Roseman scout and watch film of Cam Jurgens when the Eagles drafted him a couple of years ago. Doing media work is what Jason Kelce is going to do now, but could he coach at some point down the road? I would not rule this out, and it would be awesome to see him on the sideline for Philadelphia. And keep in mind that Jeff Stoutland, who is the best offensive line coach in the NFL, is 62 years old. How long is Stout going to coach with this organization? So I don't think that it would be crazy for Kelce to either help coach the offensive line as an assistant or be the Eagles' offensive line coach at some point, because he's a very smart player, high football IQ, and he knows the nuances of offensive line play. And we've seen that when he's helped fellow offensive linemen on this Eagles team, but also away from the facility, helping other offensive linemen in improving their craft. Since we're talking about Jason Kelce, I thought this would be a fun poll question for today's show. Who is your all-time favorite Philadelphia Eagle? I had a very difficult time coming up with my top 5. This is what I'm going with. Brian Dawkins is the background of my phone. It's been that case for years. Whenever I get my first dog, I'm hoping it's a Doberman because I grew up with Dobermans. I am going to name that Doberman Dawkins. My second favorite Philadelphia Eagle is Jason Kelce. Those are my 2 favorite Eagles jerseys that I own. 3 through 5, it was kind of hard. Brandon Graham I've grown up with. And for a lot of the same reasons that I love Jason Kelce and Brian Dawkins, he's about this city. He's about being a Philadelphia Eagle. He's also had a terrific career and had maybe the most iconic play in the history of this organization in Super Bowl 52. After that, it was so fun watching Brian Westbrook in his prime, a tremendous player who, if he were to play nowadays, I think he would even be better, especially in this fantasy era. But when fantasy was starting to take off, Brian Westbrook was like the wonder kid for fantasy football nerds. And then Malcolm Jenkins comes in at number 5 because he possesses a lot of the same traits and attributes on and off the field that Brian Dawkins, Jason Kelce, and Brandon Graham did. I thought about putting Donovan McNabb inside this top 5, but while I loved him as a player, I was never a huge fan of how he never took accountability, and that is not the Philadelphia way, although I do think he's underrated as an all-time Eagle. Before we get to story number 2 on today's show, if you want to get a Cooper DeJean shirt, great conversation starter, you'll look good, you'll feel good, you can support the show and support the birds. Get yours today at chatsports.com/DeJean, the word John. It's so Philadelphia. So are these shirts. We'll attach that link to the pinned comment, and we'll put that link down below in the show notes of today's Philadelphia Eagles. Now, we move forward to segment number 2. The New York Giants are in shambles about the Philadelphia Eagles signing Saquon Barkley in NFL free agency. And we know that's the case because of video coming out from a Hard Knocks segment throughout this offseason. Let's talk about that. First, if you hate the New York Giants, I want you to hit that thumbs up icon and like the video and type FNYG down in the comments section. Now, why are the New York Giants in shambles about losing Saquon to the Philadelphia Eagles? Well, as we know, Saquon was the face of that organization. He was probably the most well-known player on that team. And when he was healthy, a terrific player on the football field. HBO this offseason doing a Hard Knocks show for the offseason for the first time in the history of that program, which I think is awesome. From the narrator, Liev Schreiber, to the all-access look that you get, to the cinematography of Hard Knocks, I always watch. And the New York Giants were featured this offseason. From draft to free agency, Hard Knocks really documenting everything behind the scenes for New York. And for the purpose of today's show, it featured the Giants' dialogues with Saquon Barkley this offseason and trying to work out a deal, trying to bring him back and retain him, and then also the inevitable ending of him signing with the Eagles. And let's run through a couple of things and a couple of takeaways that I have from watching some of these episodes. There was a phone call between general manager Joe Schoen and Saquon Barkley where Schoen told Saquon, hey, we're going to let you hit free agency out of respect for you and how much we love you. Go test the market and see what you can get. That was a fair move by the New York Giants because they didn't want to put Saquon or the organization through the franchise tag ordeal like they did last offseason, and it didn't really end up working out for both parties. It was kind of awkward, the relationship that they had. But for any Giants fans or for any member of the Giants organization that are now hurt about Saquon leaving, it started with the Giants disrespecting Saquon by not giving him a long-term deal, coming off a great season during the 2022 campaign, and giving him that franchise tag. So if you're a Giants fan watching this show right now, you're bummed that Saquon is now rocking midnight green, blame your own organization because it's by their doing. There was also a conversation between Joe Schoen and John Mara, the Giants owner, where Schoen questioned if another team was going to give Saquon Barkley big money in free agency. He said, are we sure that another team is going to pay Saquon that type of value given the position that he plays? The Giants also were not willing to go north of $12.5 million per year. And Schoen asked Saquon's agent if Saquon was going to sign with the team inside the NFC East. And Schoen said he wanted to prepare himself mentally if that was the case. What did the Philadelphia Eagles do? They gave Saquon $26 million in guaranteed money over the first 2 years, which is pretty much $13 million per season, upping the Giants' offer. And here's what the Giants owner had to say about Saquon before he found out that Saquon was not going to return. I'll have a tough time sleeping if Saquon goes to Philadelphia. I'll tell you that. He's the most popular player we have by far. This is music to my ears. The Eagles have owned the Giants over the last decade. Philadelphia is 16-4 against New York. They've been the more well-run organization, the more talented organization, and recently they've had far more success. And to see John Mara kind of walking down the hallway slowly with his head down after finding out that Saquon is going to the Eagles, walking sadly back to his office, it was great. And Joe Schoen did say, we're going to be fine. But are the Giants going to be fine? Because looking ahead to the 2024 season, they just simply do not have a lot of talent. Now, let me give you some business and life advice, right? You are worth what somebody is willing to pay you. The New York Giants were not willing to match the Philadelphia Eagles' offer of $26 million in guaranteed money throughout the first 2 years of that contract. The Eagles were willing to pay up. The Eagles and Howie wanted Saquon Barkley. They were willing to pay him more money. The Giants could have avoided all of this by paying Saquon Barkley, by showing him that they wanted him, by not giving him the franchise tag. They disrespected him, in my opinion, with the franchise tag, with that offer, how they've treated him, how they haven't built up that offensive line, how they haven't brought in other good complementary pieces around Saquon Barkley. And it's been wild to see how Giants fans have responded to all of this. Calling him a traitor, hoping that Saquon gets hurt. And I'm tired of this personally because growing up in the Philadelphia area, shout out to Westchester, the 610, went to Temple, the 215. I've always heard Eagles fans are the worst. They're the worst fans in football. They're despicable. Yet I see all this chatter on social media of Giants fans saying, I hope that we play Philadelphia, we beat them, and I hope that Saquon Barkley gets hurt. Scum of the earth. Now, as part of this conversation, I do think that the Giants are going to end up regretting this because I think Saquon ends up having a monster season with Philadelphia for these reasons. Point number one, he's such a talented back. In this generation of the NFL, he's one of the more talented backs that we've seen. High character, great player. Last 4 years, rushing numbers. He's put up really good production when he's been able to stay on the field. Of course, in 2020, disappointing. Only the 2 games played. The torn ACL, of course, taking away from some of the special moments that he had early in his career and then trying to come back from those injuries. He's been banged up from time to time with nagging stuff like a high ankle sprain. But outside of 2020, he hasn't missed like that much time. In 2021, 13 games played, 162 carries, 593 yards, and 2 touchdowns. In 2022, a career season coming off, a couple of frustrating ones where he found his groove again from what he did the first couple of years that he was in the NFL as a dynamic and special player. 295 carries, 1,300 yards, and 10 touchdowns. And then this past year, 247 carries, nagged by that ankle, 962 yards and 6 touchdowns. The Giants as a team were just atrocious. And then on top of the talent conversation with Saquon, as part of that, it's the dual threat nature to his game. He can also catch the ball out of the backfield. And look, I think this is criminal how seldom he was used as a pass catcher in that Giants offense. I hope that Philadelphia targets him more in the pass game because they have to find ways to get him the football because when the ball is in Saquon's hands, he can make things happen. You saw in 2022, he had the 57 catches. That's great for 338 yards, but limited touchdowns, limited touches. I want to see Kellen Moore utilize Saquon a lot more in the passing game. And then the next part of this conversation, the Giants' offensive line has been and is horrible. New York Giants in run block win percentage ranked the last 2 years, 31st and 26th. Philadelphia, on the other hand, the last 2 years, 1st and 2nd. Stats via ESPN there. Even with Jason Kelce retiring, I still think this Eagles offensive line is going to be a top 5, top 10 unit. And then these numbers, according to Pro Football Focus, the last 3 years, the Giants in run block win percentage, 30th, 14th, and 21st. The Eagles, 3rd, 3rd, and 5th. So Saquon, really for the first time in his career, is going to be able to run behind a legitimate offensive line. He's also going to be able to play with some supremely talented players. The last time Saquon played with an elite skill guy, Odell Beckham Jr. And now Saquon is looking around that Eagles huddle, and he sees A.J. Brown, he sees Devontae Smith, he sees Dallas Goedert, and Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts in the backfield with Saquon is going to help out this Eagles rushing attack, but also the passing attack, because it makes the Eagles offense a lot less predictable. And I'm excited to see how Kellen Moore is going to be able to utilize Saquon. Ezekiel Elliott had some really good production under Kellen Moore. Dak Prescott had good production under Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore also likes creativity. He likes pre-snap motion. He likes pressing the defense and forcing the defense to cover every blade of grass. So for Saquon, he can run inside, he can run outside, he can line up in the slot, he can catch screen passes, wheel routes. There are just so many ways to utilize him, and he's going to have open opportunities considering the talent on this Eagles team. For those of you who do like playing fantasy, keep this in mind. I don't think that you should draft Saquon too high unless you just want rooting interest in him and the Eagles, because Eagles running backs had no carries last year from the 1-yard line. The brotherly shove had a 92.5% success rate. So with Saquon, if your fantasy league is dependent on touchdowns resulting and yielding in points, there could be a lack of touchdowns with Saquon. But as far as yards go, I think it's going to cause some havoc and do some damage. If you love the Birds, I want you to give me a Go Birds down below in the comment section. As you venture down there, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It's my goal for the 2024 season to get to 100,000 subscribers. We are approaching 80,000 subscribers right now. Once we get to that milestone, we're getting a plaque from YouTube, the silver plaque. And I want to celebrate that with all of you. So help us get there and hit that sub button.